Hi, I'm Amy and this is A Lolly Live. Today on A Lolly Live, we're going to talk about help and advice for special needs parents. And to do this, we have a special guest. The first time that I met her, I had recently moved and she came up to me at church and to introduce herself, and she's like, "Hi, I'm Victoria and I'm 13. And I was like, "Hey, I'm Amy and I'm 14. Because, yeah, and I'm pretty sure that was the exact superior tone that I used. Thankfully, she forgave my sassiness and we became fast friends. And as most young teenage girls do, we had our sleepovers and we would stay up late at night giggling and talking and scheming about marrying brothers and living on the same street so that we could always be friends. So imagine our delight when we did end up marrying brothers. Now, we don't live on the same street, but I do feel like I was given a gift when the day that I met Vicky. Vicky has gone on to write several books. She writes science fiction romance. She's published several books, and one of the, a series that she has is Predator Planet. And you might want to go and check that out, and I will put some links in the description below on places that you can go to find that. Vicky is also a mother of 6, and she has 2 special needs children. Let's welcome Vicky. And Vicky, would you mind introducing your 2 kids?
We started our special needs journey when Tessa was born. Almost, as of this recording, almost 18 years ago. She actually came out struggling a little bit with low muscle tone, and we had a little adventure in the hospital overnight, and had several years of testing to find out why she wasn't meeting milestones. And at the age of 6, she was finally diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. And girls are underdiagnosed with autism because it manifests a little bit differently in them. So she actually really loves people. Is very social. But her emotional maturity and her intellectual maturity are quite a bit younger than her actual age. And she is verbal and she is mobile, which we're very thankful for. And she's actually a delight to be around. We named her Tessa Joy, and didn't realize at the time that she's actually a very joyful person. Just every day, just a very joyful person, and people tend to gravitate toward her. Everyone at her school loves her, and everyone is a friend to her. She doesn't know a stranger. So then our caboose, our number 6 child, is our rainbow baby. He was born after a miscarriage. And we pretty much knew from the age of 4 or 5 that he had ADHD. Some people will have ADHD inattentive type, where they kind of daydream, look off into space, have trouble focusing, and that's where I fall. But some people have a lot of hyperactivity, low impulse control, and that's Hammond, our youngest. And he is a high maintenance kid, high energy. Before his official diagnosis, the only thing that would keep him entertained for any length of time and give us a moment's peace was destroying things with hammers. So
That sounds difficult. Oh my. What would you suggest to parents who have just found out that they have a special needs child, or who have suspicions that haven't been confirmed yet?
All right. Well, in the case with Tessa, she was our fourth kid, and we were just really copacetic and just kind of waiting for her to catch up. And we actually had a sister on each side of the family. One of my sisters, one of my husband's sisters, told us, you might need to get her evaluated because she's not meeting these milestones. And they each were uniquely qualified to have this information. So when you end up with a diagnosis, or you suspect there's a diagnosis, you end up going through a period, you may not even recognize it, but there's a period of mourning because your child's potential or your dreams for your child have suddenly derailed. And you may discover it, even with a mild diagnosis, but even up to a more profound diagnosis, you need to allow yourself grief at the passing of your expectations for the future for your child and for yourself. It can be a very heart-wrenching experience to have your child diagnosed as having a disorder or a disability. And you really need to give yourself permission to grieve. And sadly, you need an awareness that the grief will come back periodically, possibly with every birthday of your child, or every time there is an interaction with someone who recognizes that your child is different, not neurotypical, and they might say something that kind of brings it all back. Or if your child is spending time with neurotypical children and you can more readily see their deficits. And so just kind of have an awareness that the grief may be a part of your life for a long time, and it's okay. It's okay to grieve, and in fact, it's important to feel those emotions.
All the demands on your time and energy are associated with taking care of children is really ramped up when dealing with a special needs child. What would you tell parents who feel lost or overwhelmed by everything that's expected out of them?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Like, parenting is just hard and time consuming. I don't care who you are. It is true, however, that a special needs child is going to have more demands of your time, either because of medications or therapies, or even just extra help doing their homework or whatever it might be. And it is overwhelming. So the most important thing that parents can do is actually to put their self-care as the number one priority. You've heard the analogy of being on an airplane, all the oxygen masks drop and you put yours on first so that then you can help your child put their oxygen mask on. It's a good analogy because it's accurate. You have to have the emotional wherewithal to take care of your child or children. And if you are burning the candle at both ends, if you're operating on very little sleep, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of your child. This is one of the hardest things to learn how to do. We're programmed as parents to put our children's needs first, make sure that they're fed and clothed and bathed and well rested. But as I said before, you have to have the availability in yourself to nurture and care for your child. Self-care can look really different for different people. At the very least, you want to spend some quiet time in the morning, whatever that looks like for you. It might be prayer, it might be meditation, it might be reading comics, but just something where it's just you and you can have a little bit of peace to start your day. But self-care can be hygiene, exercise, what kind of food that you eat. It can be pampering, or it can be staying up an extra 10 minutes and getting those dishes done so you don't have to worry about it in the morning. So you just kind of search out what that self-care looks like for you, but please don't put it aside. Please make it your number one thing so that you have what it takes to keep giving to your kids.
That was great. Your child's special needs are right there, front and center, every day, and all night. It's easy to solely focus on those special needs. What do you do about making sure that you're seeing the child through the special needs? I'm not sure exactly how to phrase that, but
That's a really good question. Especially like in the first months following a diagnosis, and you might be researching and you might be having a lot of doctor appointments, and you're going through that grief process. The special need kind of just becomes this looming presence every waking moment. So it's really important to step back and spend time with your child that's unrelated to therapy, that's unrelated to diagnosis. Just kind of paying attention to their personality, paying attention to what they like, what they dislike, what some of their favorite things are. Just spending some time where it's just a parent and a child. You will find that it doesn't matter what their diagnosis is. They have a personality. They have their own character, their own way of being in the world. And it is important to focus on that and just remember who they are outside of the disability.
how do you manage all the demands on your time as far as being a special needs parent? Because, I mean, we talk about the fact that there are more demands. Well, how do you manage them?
This is something that I wish I had worked on better in the early years. So as I mentioned, my daughter with autism is going to be 18 soon. So in addition to self-care, you really need a team, a village, not just cheerleaders, but it will help you so much if you can outsource whatever responsibilities, chores, jobs, driving, whatever you can outsource is going to help you. It goes back to that, taking care of that feeling of overwhelm. And so if you have family that's willing to do some childcare once a week or once a month or whatever, if you have someone who's capable of driving kids to appointments, if you have neighbors whose kids like to play with your neurotypical kids and don't mind having them over so that your neurotypical kids can, have some normalcy and just have some playtime. But it's something I wish I had done much earlier in our career of parenting special needs. I wish that I had looked outside our immediate family for more help. There are places that offer respite care. You have to get on a waiting list and all of this, but if you can find some kind of community that can help you, it might be church community, school community, neighborhood. We actually had my daughter with autism eloped several years ago. Mom and Dad were tired. We were taking a nap on a Sunday. She got on her tricycle and just went down the street. We didn't know this. And when we woke up, she had been gone about 30 or 40 minutes. And luckily we found her. She had walked into a place that had balloons on their mailbox. So she's like, it's a party. So she just walked in. So after we found her and brought her back, I actually set up a Tessa alert system on my social media and asked all my neighbors to join it so that I could get on if it happened again. And I would just kind of have this network of people helping me look for and find her. So however you can manage that, it takes a village to raise a child, it will help you so much if you can just kind of gather a community around you and help you with not just the child care, but laundry, dishes, meals, whatever.
You mentioned outsourcing help. You said, a little bit about possibly finding some of that help with family members or church or your neighbors or things like that. Are there other places that you can suggest for parents to go looking for that help that they might need?
Yeah, you might start with your diagnosing doctor. They might have some information. Depending on where you live in the world. I know in my state, in my country, there is an early intervention program. And that was a great resource for therapy and for information and help. So, try and maybe start locally with your diagnosing doctor or families in the nearby area or school system. But definitely go online as well. You may find social media groups. I have found Facebook groups of parents of special needs, and you can even look for the specific diagnosis that your child has, and you may find an online community of support, and then just kind of expand outward from there, because there can be a global network with the help of social media.
That's great. There's a lot of different places that you can read or find out information about the struggles that your child faces, but something that I found is that they don't always agree. So have you found that to be the case, and what would you recommend parents do?
You're right. When we first got the autism diagnosis, my husband would come home with books, and I would be buying books, and first of all, who has time to read all that much? But then there might be something in one book that, like you were saying, contradicts something in another book. And in fact, there's a saying specific to autism. If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, meaning it just doesn't manifest the same way in every person. And so you read whatever you can find. Try all the resources. Try the library. Try blog posts, news articles, medical journals, whatever. But then at the end of the day, you choose what works best for your family. And so, as long as you have accurate information regarding maybe specific things, but anything else that's like, oh, you should manage it this way, you should do ABA therapy, you should do this therapy, you should do that. Do what's best for your family. In the end, mom and dad know what's best for their child. And you can read 15 books about it and maybe just pull out the pieces that make the most sense for you and your family and your child, and you just use those useful things and throw out the rest.
That's great advice, actually. That's probably great advice for just about anything in life, is that you be you. Having a special needs child really affects the family dynamics, and it puts the family under a lot of strain. And sometimes when we're under a lot of strain, our best is not what comes out. And sometimes we're, so how do you deal with the family cohesiveness that needs to take place when you're dealing with people that you love that maybe weren't so nice yesterday or the day before or right now or whatever?
Yeah, man, you reminded me like, oh, I should have done so many things differently or better all these years. So to just put it simply, you try to be kind. The number one person to be kind to is yourself, because you're going to be making a lot of mistakes. Okay, your child has this diagnosis. You have no experience parenting a child like this. I might add, you could get a second child with the same diagnosis. You don't have any experience raising that child with this same diagnosis. So be kind to yourself. And then be kind to your child with special needs. That can be hard if you're taking care of filling up your own love tank and doing your self-care. It will be easier to be kind and patient with this child who does not exist in the world the same way that a neurotypical child does. And you be kind to your family members and to your spouse, because honestly, we are all just trying the best that we can. And then I would say you expect that kindness in return. And maybe just have a regular family meeting and talk about how we treat each other and acknowledge that it's difficult for everyone in the family. It's difficult for the neurotypical people. It's difficult for the neurodiverse members of the family. We all just are trying our best, and let's all try and be kind.
Have you ever found yourself making comparisons between your situation and other families?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's really hard. In a situation where you may be having a diagnosis for a child at a young age, and we discussed the grief and we discussed the self-care and we discussed overwhelm. Something else that happens is you try to go about your life as normal as you can. And so you may schedule your family vacation. And you may realize in the midst of your vacation that this is not going to happen the way that you had imagined it was going to happen. You may realize the family vacations of your youth will never be repeated with your family. And you may see that the most simple activities have just become monumentally difficult. And there is this danger in just becoming like angry, disappointed, disillusioned, disenchanted, all the disses, because your family cannot function the way that you expected it would when you were young and in love and starting your family. It doesn't function the way your family of origin functioned when you were a little kid. And you may realize you have to completely overhaul your expectations. You may have to lower your expectations. And just as a quick example, in the early years of my oldest daughter's diagnosis, I went through a lot of emotional upheaval, a lot of anger and disappointment, self-pity. Oh, we never get to do anything fun because XYZ happens, because of autism meltdowns or because of Code Brown, God forbid. That's a big poop accident, if you didn't know what a Code Brown was. So when I had been doing this parenting for several years, we were at a family reunion and we got to go to this planetarium, which I don't know if you can tell. I love space. I love astronomy. I love the stars, the planets. I love science. So planetarium, awesome. We go in and I told myself at the beginning, any time spent inside the planetarium with the lights off, looking at the stars is going to be great. It might only be 5 minutes. But I lowered my expectation because with special needs kids, you cannot predict what their behavior is going to be like. I think we ended up 15 or 20 minutes in the presentation before it was time. It was time to take out the child with autism and the child with ADHD. And there was a playground outside, and it was a beautiful day. And we were outside, and I was happy. Even though I didn't get to watch the entire program, I was happy because I had told myself at the beginning, if you get to see a few stars, you get to be in there for a few minutes, it's going to be great. And it exceeded my expectations because it was 20 whole minutes. And then when we were outside and the kids were playing and have a good time on the playground. So you kind of have to work with yourself and kind of adjusting your attitude, and just kind of an acceptance that your family is different and unique, and don't be hard on yourself and don't be hard on your kids, and just kind of alter your expectations and adjust them to your child's capabilities and your own emotional capabilities, and try to find joy and gratitude in whatever can be managed.
That's great. That's very good advice. Sometimes people are trying to be helpful or whatever, and they give you advice, but I think it often comes across as feeling like they're judging you or telling you what you're doing wrong. So what do you do when you have a family member or a friend that is a know-it-all?
So for the interpersonal interactions where someone is a know-it-all, that can be kind of difficult. It's kind of like the smile and nod. In general, and you'll know this pretty quick, you want to surround yourself with positive people and try to avoid negative influences as much as possible. Being a parent of special needs kids, being a parent in general is difficult, and we don't need judgment. We don't need criticism. We're hard enough on ourselves. We don't need to hear what other people have to say negative about us. So if you can kind of, just in the kindest way possible, maybe weed out the negative influences or reduce the time spent with the negative influence, and just recognize the people who are genuinely supportive, genuinely trying to help, and just kind of surround yourself with those positive influences instead.
This has been really great. Has been a really good thing. I feel like that there's been a lot of things discussed that could be very helpful. Before we end, do you have any last words of counsel?
At the end of the day, it's going to be all right. You're going to make it through. The things that help you to survive the sometimes seemingly impossible task of raising a child with special needs is love. And I gotta plug humor. Gotta have humor. And even your child's own unique perspective is going to make everything okay. If you can, this has been really hard for me. I super admire moms who can jot down the funny things that their kids say and remember them. If you can do that, that'd be amazing. I never remember, ADHD brain. But there have been a few times where just the nature of autism or the nature of ADHD has made just a humorous situation out of something kind of difficult, or just bringing a smile to my face. When Tessa was really little, like, one feature of autism can be kind of a very literal view of the world. And she reached down, picked something up, and put it right in her mouth. And I was like, what did you just eat? And she said, Reese's Piece. So, like, you're used to hearing Reese's Pieces, but it was just one, so it was Reese's Piece. Just kind of recognizing those humorous parts of the day. I have another one. I was discussing I might have an emotional attachment to food. I forgot I was going to have a bag of chocolate here to eat during the interview. So I was talking about this with my older daughter. Like, are you emotionally attached to food? Because, like, sometimes I'm emotionally attached to food. And she's like, oh, totally. And Tessa had gotten up from the table and was cleaning her place off the table. And I said, Tessa, what about you? Are you emotionally attached to food? She threw her paper plate in the trash and said, not anymore. So it's just that love, humor, and your child's perspective is going to help you get through the day.
Thank you again, Vicky, for being on here and sharing your perspective. It's just refreshing, and we're just very glad to have had you on today. And we'll maybe I actually had thought maybe that there would be a chance in the future to do something similar on a slightly different version of the same topic, and so it would be kind of fun to do that.
I feel like I could talk about this stuff for hours. The good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah. Anyway, so with that, we will say goodbye, and we'll see you next time on A Lolly Life.